Hello humans, how you doing? It's me. It's Friday morning, I'm off on another cinema trip. I'm just warming the car up. Yep, it's Friday the 5th of November. There'll be fireworks tonight, trust me. It's time to see Eternals, the latest from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's about 9:30, I'm just off to get some petrol, picking up my friend Scott. We're going to have a nice cooked full English breakfast before we hit the cinema at 12. We'll be back later on with some commentary on the latest and most controversial film from Marvel. See you in a bit. So yep, it's Eternals Day. I'm just outside my friend Scott's house waiting for him to join me. Just thought I'd share a few thoughts about the film before going in to see it. Always look forward to a new Marvel film. Always huge entertainment. I'm a massive fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But I am slightly apprehensive now about Eternals because this is an entirely new property for the MCU. I've read the comics quite recently, the original Jack Kirby comics, because I wanted to know a bit about the characters in the background. The original comics are nuts, and this isn't going to be anything like that, I appreciate. But it's had quite poor critical response. I'm not entirely sure why they allowed critics to see it 2 weeks early. Fortunately, it's given a lot of time for a spin on the reviews. On Rotten Tomatoes, for what that's worth, it's currently got a 53% rating. So, which is apparently the lowest rated of Marvel's movies. So, I'm going to keep an open mind. I'm going to go in and see it and accept it for what it is. I'm sure it'll be great entertainment. I just think that the knives are out for Marvel because they've been so successful and people want to bring them down. But I'm going in with an open mind and I shall report back. Well, we'll report back later and then I'll do a full review later on this evening. So stay tuned for Marvel fun. So we are having our breakfast. We're on our way to the cinema. Tasty. Say hello, Scott.
Hello, Scott.
You enjoyed your breakfast? We hadn't started it yet.
Well, at least had some of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello there, I'm Scott Holmes. Welcome to Paul Mount's World of Stuff. We're waiting to go into the cinema to watch The Eternals. And it just seems that now, whenever we go to the cinema, we can't help but make a video before we go in. I just want to watch a film. I do.
But Paul, I'm going to make a video.
Welcome to Paul Mount's World of Stuff. I'm Scott Holmes, this is Paul Mount, and it's his channel.
Yay! We've just breakfasted, and we've breakfasted well, haven't we?
We have breakfasted quite well, yes.
Boy, that was good. In fact, I might well fall asleep during the film now.
That's blasphemous. We are about to go and watch The Eternals, which is Marvel's next big hit.
We hope it's going to be a big hit. We hope.
Comics.
Yeah, we've read the comics.
Which is bizarre.
Yeah, that's one way of putting it.
Definitely not something I'm expecting to see on the big screen.
No.
But it's a good read, so there is a good story to be had here. It's just the reviews hasn't been shining.
Yes, this is what I think I might have said earlier, that I'm slightly apprehensive because the reviews haven't been great, and I don't really understand why they made it available for the critics 3 weeks ago in America. I think Marvel may have thought that this was a masterpiece. It was going to get glowing reviews, but it hasn't. It's been a bit spiffy.
I think they kind of need it to be a masterpiece because I think these are going to be quite central characters to the sort of timeline story stuff. And
I think so, but I don't know. It'll be interesting. I'm looking forward to it. I'm keeping an open mind, as I say. And I just want to enjoy.
You've got to keep an open mind until you've seen it.
I haven't read the reviews in depth. I know it's, some of them have been a bit iffy, and of course.
Could this be the first Marvel film for Paul Mount to agree that Marvel are not perfect?
Thor Ragnarok was that.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, a lot of the balloon brains on YouTube, no offense to other balloon brains, have given it negative reviews and the clickbaity, this is shit reviews. But let's go in and find out, because at the end of the day, our opinion is what counts. Isn't that right?
Yours is what counts. I'm just the guy in the background.
I didn't like to say that. That is very true. Right, let's go and get our coffees and go and get seated.
Another coffee?
Oh, yeah.
Gonna be bouncing off the walls, man.
Bleh, I had tea.
Oh yeah, I had a coffee.
Yeah.
I might not have another coffee.
You can have some sort of fruit juice.
Oh, that's a bit fancy.
Fruit
La-di-da.
juice. La-di-da.
La-di-da.
See you later.
Bye.
Two hours later.
Oh, hello. There we are. We're out
Hello.
from The Eternals. 2 hours later, although it seems like about 6 hours later. I think it's fair to say Scott wasn't a fan.
No.
Didn't like it at all. I liked it more than Scott, but it's a massively flawed film.
It's a hell of a slog to get through.
It's a slog to get through. The Eternals is directed by Chloe Zhao, who did Nomadland, which I haven't seen, but I hear is quite sort of arty. And this is an attempt at doing an arty Marvel film. It's beautifully made. It looks fantastic. There's some great cinematography in it.
Just be prepared for a gallon and a half of dialogue.
It is. A lot of people have said it's very dense.
Weepy
and it is. There's a lot in it. But the problem is, in trying to move away from the Marvel formula, they've created something that's not incredibly entertaining. As Scott said, the trouble is you get an action scene, which is all fine. You know, it's fairly routine, Marvel, zappy, zippy, fly around, throw bolts of power everywhere. And then people stop, and generally in pairs, and talk.
Yeah.
And they say much the same thing all the time about humanity and try to save humanity and not wanting to be humanity. And there's long scenes of people standing looking out over the sea or over the mountains, and you think...
It could be an hour film.
They could cut to half an hour off quite easily. So the pace is a problem.
Yeah.
It's trying to be arty and clever, but then they can't resist trying to be funny, and the humour, because of the sort of film it is, the humour doesn't really sit very well, and it feels a bit forced. And
They tried to throw in a couple of banter between the characters.
Yeah,
Well, you've just established this emotional conversation all the time.
Yeah,
Then this odd joke comes in and you just think, oh, that fell flat.
they're supposed to be these sort of god-type creatures, cracking Marvel humour, and this time I just didn't find it funny. Normally you laugh at all the Marvel quips, but they just felt forced.
Yeah.
In short, disappointing.
4 out of 10.
4 out of 10. I'm going to give it 6 out of 10. I quite liked it, but it is a slog. I think it perked up in the last 40 minutes or so when the stakes started raising. But it's hard to love because the characters aren't people you can
And let me tell you
relate
something.
to.
If I do a Marvel run through, I will more than likely skip this one.
I'll put a big sound effect. You're going dun dun dun. There it is. Yeah, I mean, as I said, when we came out, when Shang-Chi came out, I rushed back to see it the following week. I really couldn't stomach seeing this again because it's a slog. I'll buy it on 4K and I'll watch it in the
Honestly,
comfort of my own
at
home.
one point, after two characters had a conversation, quite a long one, emotional.
Yes.
So the next scene then was two people having another conversation, and in my seat, I literally went.
Well, actually, I saw you do that, and I thought for a second you were going to get and walk out and have a vape because I thought you were bored.
There were times I wanted to. I really did.
Yeah.
I really did.
So that's Eternals. It's a challenging film.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a bad film, but it's not a great Marvel film. I think it's trying too hard not to be a Marvel film, but then sometimes it wants to be and sometimes it doesn't, which makes it a difficult watch. So I'm going to give it 6 out of 10.
I wouldn't even watch this if it wasn't a Marvel film.
Boo.
You know, I would go back and watch the entire of the Zack Snyder sort of film of
You're sick
the
of the head.
Justice League.
You're sick of the
because
head.
at least there's some entertaining fight scenes and stuff in that.
Yeah.
This was just, let's have a talk. Let's have a talk.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
PM me, love. Are you okay?
Yeah.
It was just a lot of it.
The pace is wrong. It just starts to get going, then it stops. And people having the same conversation. Anyway, more on that later. Scott didn't like it. I thought it was all right. But certainly not top tier Marvel. Anyway, say goodbye, Scott.
Goodbye, Scott.
And we'll see you soon.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
2 hours later.
Hello there, welcome back. A couple of hours later now, I'm back at home. I'm in the cinema room. I'm just going to wrap up on Eternals because I appreciate that our in-car review wasn't particularly in-depth. It was just out of cinema reaction. So I thought I'd do something a little bit more in-depth about the film or why I felt it was frankly underwhelming. The problem with Eternals, I think, is that very often people say about Marvel films, oh, it's a formula. They're very formula films. You get the origin, you get the villain, you get the fight, and then the hero moves on to the next adventure. I think what this film had the capacity to do, based certainly on the source material, is break that formula a little bit. And I think that was what Marvel hoped to be able to do by getting Chloe Zhao, who directed Nomadland, which won the Oscar, of course, this year. Only the second female director in history to win the Oscar, by the way. I think they anticipated more of an arty, art house feel to the film. And I think that's what it tries to go for to an extent, but misses the mark a little bit because it hasn't quite got the courage of its convictions. It looks beautiful. The cinematography by Ben Davis is really outstanding. There are some fantastic long shots of landscapes. There's a real sense of visual scale to the film, but it can't shake off that need to do what Marvel always does. I mean, you've got an overload of CGI. Of course, you've got some humor, which I think is out of place, frankly, because this is a film which has the potential to be a bit more serious, with higher stakes than we're used to, certainly in recent Marvel films. I mean, it's hard to imagine higher stakes than in Infinity War and Endgame. But I think this is a story that needed to be perhaps a little more serious than it actually is. I mean, it's hard to sort of explain it really. I think the problem I had really, several problems. One, the humor felt forced and shoehorned in, as if Marvel felt, well, they want to do something different, but we need that sort of insurance policy of delivering the humor that Marvel fans know and apparently love. Another problem was the pacing. Now, there's spectacle, there's lots of action scenes, but it's all quite generic. It's superpowered people fighting beasts, firing laser beams, wielding magic weapons, sending out power bolts. It's all that sort of stuff. And that's fine. It looks okay. I think we've seen so much of that stuff. It hasn't got its wow factor anymore. The problem is, in between those scenes, we've got endless sequences, and I do mean endless sequences, of characters, usually in pairs, standing together in a very nice place, on a beach, on a mountain, on a hill, overlooking the sea, talking at great length and quite pompously about their origins and the meaning of life and their purpose. And they do tend to sort of repeat information that we already know. And they say things that we've known, we've witnessed, and that we've gathered from the storyline. And those scenes just really drag the film down. Whatever momentum the film is building up, and it never really builds up that much, is ground to a halt by these scenes of people talking. And it's a shame because it's a good cast. We've got a really good cast here. We've got Gemma Chan, Richard Madden, Angelina Jolie. We've got Richard Harrington, Salma Hayek, Kumail Nanjiani. I mean, it's a really good cast playing potentially interesting characters. Now, perhaps the problem I had with this is that in the last couple of weeks, as you know from my pickup videos, I've been reading the Eternals, the original Eternals Jack Kirby comic, which is just nuts. In the 1970s, it's just big and bold and daft and bonkers. And I possibly spoiled this film for me because this film was never going to be that, because some of the ideas and visuals there would just be, one, too much for the audience to cope with, and two, almost impossible to bring to the screen even with the effects we have today. I think the story would have been too remote for an audience to come to terms with. What they've done is completely reimagine the idea of the Eternals. In short, I'm not going to spoil the film or give away any plot details particularly. But basically, the Eternals are these mythical figures who come apparently from the planet Olympia and have been sent to Earth to protect the population of Earth from creatures known as deviants, who are basically rampaging, mindless dragon creatures. They can't interfere in anything else that goes on Earth, but they're there to sort of prod Earth's technology forward and prod Earth's development, but they don't get involved in any local squabbles or any human squabbles, which explains why they didn't get involved in the battle with Thanos. That's particularly referenced. One of the problems, again, is in the original comics, it's a slightly more interesting idea, in that the Eternals and the Deviants and creatures called Celestials are all godlike creatures who have been on Earth and developed on Earth. And the humans, the Deviants and the Eternals are basically humans who've just gone down different evolutionary patterns. paths, having been created by the Celestials in outer space. And in the comic version, the Deviants aren't just beasts. They have a civilization of their own. They have their own technology. They're grotesque sort of monstrous creatures, but they have an intelligence, and you don't get that here. They are very much just cannon fodder for fight scenes, and that's sort of takes some of the interest away, because they're just, you know, there's nothing much for the Eternals to butt up against other than just monsters who are just there causing chaos. The history of the film is that the characters, the Eternals, have been on Earth for thousands of years, and we get flashbacks to them in different situations, and they've been constantly fighting off the Deviants, and eventually when all the Deviants are destroyed, they go undercover, so they just live normal lives. The Deviants have reappeared. During the course of the film, we discover a little bit more about the origins of the Eternals, and a threat arises that could cause disaster for the Earth, basically. Now, I think also perhaps it's too soon after Endgame to have the Earth in danger again. You know, we've been there, we've done that. And I quite like the slightly lower stakes that some of the Marvel films have had since then. This just pits us right back to the Earth's in danger, only the Eternals can help. And you sort of think, yeah, I don't need that just yet. I just wasn't convinced by the film. As I say, the pacing is the issue. You get so many of these talking scenes that it just absolutely brings the film to a dead stop. It makes it boring. Characters, although they're well played by the cast, are quite flat and uninteresting. I mean, Gemma Chan, a lot of people have raved about Gemma Chan's performance, and I think it's workmanlike. She delivers her lines effectively, but there's not much passion or life in these characters. Angelina Jolie is great. She plays Thena, who's one of the most interesting characters because she's an Eternal who is slightly left of centre. She's slightly quirky and slightly unusual, and I'd have liked to have seen more of her. Plus, I'm a big Angelina Jolie fan, and she looks stunning in this film, I have to say. The humour just seems misplaced, as I've said. The scenes with Kumail Nanjiani's character that just creak. And you know, it's the same sort of humour that we always get in Marvel films, but it doesn't land in this film. There's normally, you know, quite a nice quip or a joke in all the Marvel films. They're here in this, but they don't work. And it's funny. It's hard to put my finger on it, but something isn't right with this film. I think ultimately Marvel wanted to do something different, but sort of pulled back at the last minute and thought, well, we better give people what they expect from Marvel. It's a dense film. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of issues about family and relationships and humanity, what it means to be human, all those sort of cliches. But it's just not very interesting at the end of the day. It's just a bit dull. The visuals, we've seen it all before. People flying through the air, as I've said, the usual stuff. And it does pick up towards the end. Again, because it's so well filmed. It's firework night, by the way, hence all the banging and crashing out there. It's very well filmed. Visually, it's beautifully put together, but the script is a bit perfunctory, and it's hard to care. And it's boring. I think that's the bottom line is I found it quite boring. And that's something I don't think a Marvel film is ever supposed to be. It's a misfire, unfortunately. There are end credit sequences which suggest that there's more to come from these characters. To be honest, at the moment, I've no real interest in seeing them unless something much more interesting is done with them. So that's my view of the Eternals. Just to round off what we said in the in-car video earlier on, because that was very sort of, you know, we've just come out of the cinema, this is what we think. I gave it a 6 before. Having thought about it now, I think 6 is a bit too generous. So sadly, Eternals gets from me a 5. Because it's not bad. It's too well made to be a bad film, but it's just not as engaging as you expect, and in fact demand from Marvel. And I think we're so used now, 22, 23 films in, to just falling in love with that world that Marvel creates. This just doesn't pull you in the same way. So it is a disappointment. Whether I should have read the original comics, whether I should have gone in cold. I didn't expect the Jack Kirby comics. I haven't read any of the other reboot versions of the comics. Whether I should just have gone in to watch the film without that foreknowledge, I don't know. But if you want to see the Eternals, if you're a Marvel fan, you will go and see it. But it isn't top tier Marvel. Sadly, it sort of falls right down the bottom of the rankings for me, which is a shame because I love the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I want them to make good films. I want the films to be successful and popular. And this may well be successful, but I just don't think it's going to be beloved in the way that many of the other titles are. So that's the Eternals. It's out now in cinemas. Go and have a look. Let me know what you think. If you've seen it already, leave a comment down below. Let me know what you thought. because I will be very interested to hear what people think about this, because it could be quite divisive, as it already has been if you've seen other reviews that have appeared so far. Like and subscribe, of course, if you like this channel. It would be lovely if you would subscribe, because those numbers are stuck at the moment. So like and subscribe. In terms of the future, I've got a couple of other videos already to go. I just need to edit them. I've got my latest pickups and collect, Blu-rays and bits and pieces that I've collected. I've got a couple of retro reviews to do, which should be coming out in the next few days. Of course, the next episode of Doctor Who will be up on Sunday. So a lot coming, so stick around, because there's good stuff to come. Until next time then, all I will say to you, as ever, until we meet again, is keep taking the stuff back!